How's it going, guys? And welcome back to a new week, a new season, a new subclass layout to play with, which means it's time for new builds. So this week, after taking a week off, to let that last season play out, this season come in, I'm going to start with a hunter build. And I have played with this build since the launch of the new season, which has only been like a day, but it feels really good already without really having unlocked any of the end tier artifact mods. So we're just going to get started with the build that I have named Scorched Blades. First thing we're going to look at this time around is we're going to look at the class setup first, as that's going to explain some of the other options that I've picked later on in this particular video. The first thing we're going to use is Blade Barrage. Vault into the air and release a volley of solar charged explosive knives. I'm using this super in particular for this build because as of right now, on my initial testing, it feels better than Golden Gun, which makes me very sad to say because I was really looking forward to using Golden Gun. I need to do more testing, figure out an actual build for it, but right now, this is the funnest thing that I have played so far this season, and because of this build, Blade Barrage has been extremely enjoyable. With that, we're also going to use Knife Trick. Throw a fan of flaming knives at scorch targets on hit. Whole idea behind this build is to apply as much scorch as we can to targets. Hence why we're using Knife Trick. If it's broke, don't fix it. Blade Barrage and Knife Trick go hand in hand. It's very good. Now, Scorch is one of the new debuffs that essentially works like Burn did in the past seasons. The only change is that after you apply enough Scorch, your target ignites and causes ignition, which causes them to explode. It's actually really cool. Our first aspect we're going to look at is called Knock 'em Down. Your solar supers are enhanced. Golden Gun Deadshot has increased duration. Golden Gun Marksman has increased damage resistance and duration. And Blade Barrage launches more projectiles. While Radiant, final blows with your equipped throwing knife fully refund your melee energy. This gives us 2 fragment slots as well as more projectiles for us to throw with our Blade Barrage, which with our exotic, which you can probably already guess, is going to make it work better. And the ability to get our knives back while we are radiant feeds into another armor mod we're going to use, as well as another aspect we're going to use, or a fragment we're going to use. The next aspect we're going to use is called On Your Mark. Precision final blows grant you and nearby allies increased weapon handling and reload speed for a short duration. Stacks 3 times. Activating your class ability, your dodge, immediately grants maximum stacks of On Your Mark. This will give us 3 more fragment slots, giving us 5 in total. This is a nice aspect to have to help the team out, give them a nice little buff, and to yourself as well. I primarily see this as for fragments and a PvP one, as I don't really use, weapon handling and reloading inside of PvE that often, or I just don't notice it as much, but it's actually really nice. It's really nice to have. The first fragment we're going to look at is Ember of Singeing. Your class ability recharges faster when you scorch targets. Because we're applying scorch constantly to these targets, as much as we possibly can, we will get our dodge back really quickly, allowing us to throw more knives, activate On Your Mark, and then just repeating the process over and over again. Second fragment we're going to look at, Ember of Beams. Your solar super projectiles have stronger target acquisition, plus 10 intellect. This is to help those extra projectiles we're going to get from Blade Barrage and Knock 'em Down to hit targets, to reach the, optimal DPS, but that's not what we're quite going for here. We're just looking to throw as many knives as we possibly can, including with our Blade Barrage. Ember of Torches. Powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant. We'll be throwing a ton of knives, so let's get that radiant buff that gives us additional gun damage, to ourselves and allies, as well as a chance to get those knives back, because with the fan of knives, once one knife hits, you get your radiant buff. And then if that next knife kills a target, you then get your knives back. It's really nice. Ember of Blistering. Defeating targets with solar ignitions grant grenade energy. When applying those scorch stacks, you will reach enough of them, the target will catch fire, and it will cause that ignition debuff that I was talking about earlier, which causes the solar explosion to damage an area around the target. By defeating targets back in this way, we will get our grenade back a little faster. We're going to be running Incendiary so we can keep stacking those scorches because, you know, the incendiary grenades do a high amount of scorch, according to what it says. And then finally, we're going to look at Ember of Ashes. Apply more scorch stacks to targets. This will allow us to get us that ignition debuff faster, which will be good for our grenade and some ad clearing, and overall getting our dodge back to throw more of those knives. Now, let's look at those two exotics that I'm going to use with, you know, this particular build. One of which, Shards of Galanor, which comes with the exotic perk Sharp Edges. Hits and kills with Blade Barrage will return super energy after the super ends. This can refund up to 50%, but that's really all we need. We just need a little oomph on that Blade Barrage, as we'll be able to get the last 50% with mods and defeating targets, you know, just naturally. The second exotic we're going to look at for this particular build is Prometheus Lens, which comes with the exotic perk Prismatic Inferno. Fires a solar trace beam that creates a field of heat energy that grows as the weapon is fired. Sustained damage applies scorch to the targets. Great weapon to pair with this build, as trace rifles are actually in a really good spot so far this season. They have overload ability later on, you know, when you get to that particular part of the artifact, as well as applying that scorch debuff that we really, really want to apply here, especially when you are chunking down higher health targets. When it comes to red bars, Prometheus Lens kills them before the scorch can take effect. But with higher yellow bars and red bars, and even bosses, if you just want a fan of kniving bosses, you're gonna get your, you're gonna apply that scorch, get your dodge back quicker, and then you're gonna be able to just, just dodge, throw knives, dodge, throw knives. It's a very, very good loop to have. Finally, let us look at the armor mods that I'm gonna be using to try to make this build push out a little over the edge. Now, I'm gonna make this completely apparent by saying you don't need any of these armor mods. You just really need the class setup. That's all you need, and this build works really, really good. First armor mod we're going to look at Seeking Wells. Elemental wells you create will move across the ground towards nearby players. I'm using this because, quite frankly, I'm lazy, and I have gotten really used to wells that I make coming to me instead of me going to them. It makes it easier to just passively get our well buffs to work for us without really noticing. And there's a lot of times where like, oh, I need to pick up a well. Oh, I already have the buff that I need to make this work. So now the wells that we're going to be making are going to come from Melee Wellmaker. Powered melee combatant final blows spawn elemental wells matching your subclass energy type. This whole build heavily plays into our melee ability. So, we're going to make use of it as much as we can by using, our fan of knives to make us solar wells so we can feed the last two mods, one of which being Font of Wisdom. Picking up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type grants you a temporary significant increase in your intellect, improving the recharge rate of your super. This is going to be primarily used to getting that first Blade Barrage faster, as well as topping us off for that last 50% from Shards of Galanor that, Shards will give us. The second mod we're going to be feeding is Well of Ordinance. Picking up a solar elemental well grants you additional grenade energy. Multiple copies of this mod increase this effect. I ended up double stacking this, so you can get more grenade energy back to you. And, in this case, we're using the grenade to apply more scorch, which will then feed back into our knives, which will get a kill, which will feed back into our super, our other abilities, and our grenade. Other little tiny mods that I use hands-on to get more super energy on melee kills, as we are getting a ton of melee kills. This will allow our super to come back faster, as well as grenade kickstart, because we don't really need a lot of help with our melee charges due to dodging, getting it back, and just, the being radiant to get them back, so we don't really need help with our grenade or our melee, so we're going to throw that into our grenade. Now, some stuff I'm going to add later this season with the artifact, one of which is Flame Harvesting. Solar exotic final blows create solar elemental wells. I will eventually swap out Melee Wellmaker for this while running Prometheus Lens, and then I'll replace Melee Wellmaker with Font of Might so that our solar weapon we are using will now do an additional 25% damage. The next one I'm going to add is Solar Fulmination. Your ignitions do increased damage and an increased radius. Scorching leads to ignition, ignitions lead to explosions. So let's make those ignitions do even more damage to more of an area of effect. So with that is, my starting Solar 3.0 Hunter build. There's still some stuff I want to play with before I make another one, one of which is I want to see if, the buff that being Radiant gives to Nighthawk. And I want to get the new Hunter exotic, which does stuff with proximity knives. Once I get those two things set, I'm going to make at least two more Hunter builds for Solar. I'm pretty sure that's really all there is to explore on Hunters this season is just our new Solar stuff. I might eventually do a PvP one with 6-shot Golden Gun and Lucky Pants, feel like a cowboy. Other than that, it's going to be a really heavy Titan Warlock season, as they have a ton of changes that make them just really, really good overall. So with that being said, I hope everybody has enjoyed this video. I hope everybody takes some inspiration from this build. And I hope that everybody is enjoying this season so far. After a few days, I'm loving this season. The activity is a little repetitive, but the story narrative and just the overall feel of the season is really, really, really good. So, with that being said, I will see you all next week with, I think I'm going to do a Titan build. So, I'll see you all then.